الله الرحمن الرحيم. يشرف المركز القومي للبحوث اليوم باستضافة ندوة بعنوان التعريف ببرامج البحوث المدعومة من الاتحاد الأوروبي. Information on the European Commission Supported Research Program تحت الرعاية الكريمة لسعادة السيد الأستاذ الدكتور مفيد شهاب وزير التعليم العالي ووزير الدولة للبحث العلمي، وبحضور كل من سيادة سفير الاتحاد الأوروبي في القاهرة His Excellency Mr. Ian Borg, Ambassador of the European Commission in Egypt، وسيادة الأستاذ الدكتور هاني ناظر رئيس المركز القومي للبحوث، والسيدة السفيرة مي أبو الدهب مساعد وزير الخارجية، وبحضور السادة الضيوف مستر لوي فاليمان Head of the International Relations Division, Directorate General of Research for the European Commission، والسيدة دكتورة ماريا كايامانيديو International Relations Division, Directorate General of Research for the European Commission، وجمع كثير من السادة العلماء والباحثين في الجامعات ومراكز البحوث والوزارات المعنية. ويتكرم سعادة السيد الأستاذ الدكتور وزير التعليم العالي والدولة للبحث العلمي بحضور هذه الندوة وتشريفها أيضا. والكلمة الآن لسيادة السيد الأستاذ الدكتور هاني الناظر رئيس المركز القومي.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. معالي السيد الأستاذ الدكتور مفيد شهاب وزير التعليم العالي والدولة للبحث العلمي، مستر إيان بورغ Ambassador of the European Commission in Egypt، السيدة السفيرة مي أبو الدهب مساعد وزير الخارجية للعلاقات الثقافية والعلمية الدولية والتعاون الفني بوزارة الخارجية، السيدات والسادة الضيوف الأعزاء، الزميلات والزملاء الكرام، اسمحوا لي أن أرحب بكم في بيتكم، بيت العلم والعلماء، المركز القومي للبحوث. واسمحوا لي أيضا أن أرحب بمسيو باليمون والدكتورة ماريا كايامانيدو ضيوفنا واللي هيتحدثوا إلينا اليوم. لا شك أن انعقاد ندوتنا اليوم تحت عنوان تدعيم برنامج البحوث والتطوير من خلال الاتحاد الأوروبي يعكس الرغبة المشتركة بين علماء مصر وبحاثها من جانب ومسؤولي الاتحاد الأوروبي من جانب في دفع عجلة التعاون العلمي وفتح آفاق جديدة لمشاريع بحثية مشتركة بين الجانبين، وهذا إن دل على شيء وإنما يدل على عمق العلاقات التي تجمع بين شعوب الاتحاد والشعب المصري. هذا الشعب الذي امتدت حضارته العظيمة منذ فجر التاريخ، فكان المصريون القدماء هم أول من أخذ بأسباب العلم وقدموا للبشرية الكثير في علوم الطب والزراعة والتشييد والبناء، وهم أول من وضع أسس التعاون الدولي والتبادل التجاري عندما ذهبوا جنوبا عبر البحر الأحمر وشمالا عبر البحر الأبيض المتوسط، ففتحوا قنوات التجارة والعلم بين مصر وبين بلاد العالم المختلفة. السيدات والسادة، إن بناء جسور التعاون العلمي بيننا وبين دول الاتحاد الأوروبي أصبح له أهمية كبرى، خاصة ونحن على أعتاب مشروع قومي ضخم وهو مشروع تحديث الصناعة في مصر. ولقد أدرك علماء المركز القومي للبحوث أهمية هذا التعاون، فبدأوا أولى خطوات هذا التعاون من خلال مجموعة من المشاريع البحثية مع السوق الأوروبية المشتركة، منها على سبيل المثال تطوير تقنيات معالجة المخلفات الآدمية السائلة منخفضة التكاليف لاستخدامها في ري الزراعات المناسبة، مقاومة الملوحة وتأثير التصحر في منطقة البحر الأبيض المتوسط، تطوير إنتاج محصول الذرة الرفيعة بالصعيد، تحسين الخواص الطبيعية والمائية للأراضي المصرية. تلك المشاريع ما هي إلا البداية، ولكننا نطلع المزيد من العمل البحثي المشترك. إننا اليوم نتحدث عن بناء جسور للتعاون العلمي، ولكي نبني جسرا فنحن في حاجة لوضع قواعد وأساسات لهذا الجسر. ومن هنا كانت أهمية عقد هذا اللقاء العلمي لكي نضع القواعد التي تعظم الاستفادة من البرامج البحثية للاتحاد الأوروبي لتنفيذ المشروعات البحثية المشتركة، وذلك من خلال أولا التعرف على البرامج البحثية الحالية للاتحاد الأوروبي، ثانيا دراسة فرص التعاون المستقبلية في المجالات البحثية ذات الاهتمام المشترك، ثالثا التعرف على كيفية إعداد مقترح مشروع بحثي يتوافق مع متطلبات الاتحاد الأوروبي. السيدات والسادة، إنني على ثقة كبيرة من أن نجاح انعقاد هذه الندوة يدل على رغبة حقيقية من الجانب الأوروبي لتوطيد علاقات التعاون العلمي مع علماء مصر وبحاثها. لكن اسمحوا لي أن أكون أمينا عندما أقول أن هناك من أبناء مصر المخلصين من كانوا وراء هذا النجاح، وأنتهز الفرصة لكي أتقدم بجزيل الشكر لهم، وهم السيدة السفيرة نبيلة سلامة مديرة إدارة شؤون البحث العلمي والتكنولوجيا بوزارة الخارجية، الأستاذ الدكتور مدحت سيف النصر رئيس قطاع البحث العلمي وشؤون مكتب الوزير بوزارة التعليم العالي والدولة البحث العلمي، وزميلي الأستاذ الدكتور باسل المنشاوي نائب رئيس المركز للمشروعات البحثية. وفي النهاية أسأل المولى عز وجل أن يكمل أعمال هذه الندوة بالنجاح والتوفيق، وشكرا.
والكلمة الآن بزيادة السفيرة مي أبو الدهب مساعد وزير الخارجية للعلاقات الدولية والتعاون الخارجي.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. معالي الأستاذ الدكتور مفيد شهاب وزير التعليم العالي ووزير الدولة للبحث العلمي، الأستاذ الدكتور هاني الناظر رئيس المركز القومي للبحوث، سعادة سفير الاتحاد الأوروبي في مصر، السادة ممثلو برنامج التعاون العلمي والتكنولوجي في الاتحاد الأوروبي، السيدات والسادة العلماء الأجلاء وضيوفنا الأعزاء. يسعدني ويشرفني أن أشارككم اليوم في افتتاح هذه الندوة، وأنقل إليكم تحيات السيد وزير الخارجية وتمنياته بالتوفيق وتحقيق النتائج المرجوة منها والمثمرة بإذن الله. إن وزارة الخارجية إماما منها بدور البحث العلمي كأداة للتطور التكنولوجي اللازم للتنمية الاقتصادية تبذل جهودا دؤوبة لتحقيق أفضل استفادة من فرص التعاون الدولي لتدعيم القاعدة العلمية المصرية والمساهمة في نقل التكنولوجيا الحديثة، ويمثل ذلك أحد أبعاد الهامة للسياسة الخارجية المصرية. وقد أنشأت وزارة الخارجية وحدة مختصة بشؤون البحث العلمي والتكنولوجيا في عام 1997، وذلك في ضوء الحاجة الماسة إلى تعزيز تعاوننا مع العالم الخارجي في هذين المجالين، والارتباط تطوير البحث العلمي بالعديد من آليات العلاقات الدولية التي تحتاج إدارتها إلى خلفية علمية بجانب الرؤية والاتصالات السياسية. تمثل شؤون البحث العلمي والتكنولوجيا نقطة اتصال داخل وزارة الخارجية بين المراكز العلمية والبحثية المصرية والسفارات المصرية في الخارج، ومن أهم أهدافها التنسيق في مجال التعاون الدولي ونقل التكنولوجيا وتدعيم العلاقات مع الجهات المانحة سواء على المستوى الثنائي أو الإقليمي أو الدولي، وموافاة الأجهزة البحثية في مصر بأحدث التطورات في مجالات العلوم الحديثة والتكنولوجيا عن طريق ما يرد من بعثتنا في الخارج، ذلك بالإضافة إلى تسويق برامج التدريب التي تقدمها وتتميز فيها المراكز البحثية والعلمية المصرية. أما بالنسبة للاستفادة من برنامج التعاون العلمي والتكنولوجي مع الاتحاد الأوروبي، فقد لاحظت وزارة الخارجية أن المشاركة المصرية في هذا المجال محدودة ولا تتناسب مع إمكانات القاعدة العلمية في مصر مقارنة بدول أخرى في منطقة المتوسط، ويرجع ذلك بشكل عام إلى عدم توافر معلومات كافية لدى المراكز العلمية والبحثية المصرية عن البرامج وعن الإلمام بشكل خاص بقواعد إعداد نماذج المقترحات الخاصة بالمشروعات وفق متطلبات الاتحاد الأوروبي. ومن هنا جاءت التفكير في عقد هذه الندوة للتنسيق بين وزارتي الخارجية والدولة للبحث العلمي، والتي تهدف إلى إعداد مشروع قومي لتطوير البحث العلمي والتكنولوجي في مصر بالتعاون مع الاتحاد الأوروبي. وفي الختام أنتهز هذه الفرصة وأدعو المراكز العلمية المصرية إلى الأخذ بهذه المبادرة والتحرك بإيجابية للاستفادة من هذه البرامج والانفتاح على مؤسسات العلوم والتكنولوجيا في دول الاتحاد الأوروبي، مما يزيد من فرص نقل التكنولوجيا الحديثة لمصر ويساعد البحث العلمي على أن يقوم بدوره كأداة للتنمية الاقتصادية. Excellency Ambassador Ian Ball of the European Commission to Egypt, Dr. Maria Kayamanido, Mr. Louis Belman. Allow me please to welcome you to Egypt and to express my gratitude on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the positive response extended by the competent authorities in charge of the program of science and technology cooperation in order to address our scientists as how to prepare a successful project proposal. We have big hopes and are determined to make the best use of the opportunities made available by your program. We thank you for your assistance and wish this seminar every success. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to invite His Excellency Mr. Ian Ball, Ambassador of the European Commission to Egypt, to give a short speech.
Thank you very much. Mr. Minister, Mr. President, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I will follow the instruction to give a short speech, I promise you. First of all, let me say how grateful I am to all of those who have contributed to the organization of this seminar. I'm also grateful to my colleagues who have come from Brussels to participate. I know that it is always very difficult to drag people away from Brussels, even when the possibility is to come to Egypt. So I'm very grateful for their presence here. The relations between Egypt and the European Union are guided basically by two things. First of all, the association agreement, which we signed in June of last year, which foresees a considerable degree of cooperation in many fields between Egypt and the European Union. And more broadly, what is known as the Barcelona process, which is a process that was instituted in 1995, which envisages cooperation between the European Union and its 15 member states and the 12 countries on the southern part of the Mediterranean basin. This presupposes a cooperation between all 27 countries, and the framework program for scientific research and development falls very neatly into both of these categories. It will, I hope, provide for a considerable degree of bilateral cooperation between the European Union and Egypt, but also it does, I think, offer possibilities for cooperation between the various countries of the southern Mediterranean in their cooperation with the European Union. So this exercise achieves both of those activities. One of the most interesting aspects of the framework program is that it is very much driven by the scientific community rather than officials. It is the research institutes which meet together and draw up projects which they would like to see financed, and these projects are judged not by civil servants but by committees of scientists themselves. So it is very much, the projects are very much subject to peer review, which I think is a very good aspect of the program, and in general provides for very good networking between scientific communities. I would like to mention that I think that participation in this framework program has a possible link with the industrial modernization program, which we already finance with the Ministry of Industry, the aim of which is to enable Egypt's industry to develop to meet the challenge of globalization and the modern world. And I think that there are the fruits of scientific research may well make themselves felt in this program. I should add that the purpose of today's exercise is to explain to the scientific community in Egypt how they can apply, how this program is run, and how the individual research sectors here in Egypt can apply to take advantage of it. But as I say, this is basically driven by the scientific community itself, and therefore the capacity to benefit from this program very much depends upon the quality of the propositions which are submitted. Now, I and my delegation, Mr. Andrea, who works in the delegation here in Cairo, and also our visitors from Brussels are here to help advise and give information. But ultimately, the success of Egypt's participation in this program depends upon the quality of the proposals that you can prepare amongst yourselves and with European partners and submit to us. So I'm thanking you once again for organising this seminar. I wish you good luck in preparing projects which will enable us to become partners in this very important field. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Ambassador. والآن يشرفني دعوة معالي السيد الأستاذ الدكتور مفيد شهاب وزير التعليم العالي ووزير الدولة للبحث العلمي. فليتفضل سيادته.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الأستاذ الدكتور هاني الناظر رئيس المركز القومي للبحوث. His Excellency Ambassador Ian Book, Ambassador of the European Commission in Egypt. السيدة السفيرة ميا بالدهب مساعد وزير الخارجية. الأستاذ الدكتور بسام المشاوي نائب رئيس المركز القومي للبحوث. السيدات والسادة. Ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to welcome all of you here today to this important event. I would like especially to welcome all of our European friends coming from abroad and to wish all of them a successful seminar and a pleasant stay in Cairo. I would also like to thank the organizer of this seminar and being sure that it will be one of our best seminar, successful one and a fruitful one. Our guest, Ambassador, please allow me to deliver my speech in Arabic, if you don't mind. السيدات والسادة، يثير موضوع السياسات العلمية والتكنولوجية ضرورة أن نتعرف بسرعة على الواقع الذي نعيش فيه في عالم اليوم وتوقعات المستقبل. هذا الواقع يقول لنا أننا نعيش الآن في ظل ثورة علمية لها تطبيقاتها التكنولوجية المعاصرة. تتمثل هذه الثورة في هذا التقدم المتسارع على محاور تكنولوجيا المعلومات والهندسة الوراثية والمواد الآلية، وتطبيقات ذلك على وجه الخصوص في مجالات الفضاء والإلكترونيات الدقيقة والطاقات الجديدة والمتقدمة والتحكم الإلكتروني في الإنتاج والخدمات والإدارة العلمية. وتواجه الإنسانية الآن قفزة كمية هائلة نحو الأمام، أي تواجه على حد تعبير علماء المستقبليات ما يمكن أن نطلق عليه بالموجة الثالثة من تطور البشرية. ذلك أن البشرية قد مرت حتى الآن بموجتين عظيمتين من التحول غيرت كل منهما ثقافات وحضارات السابقة عليها. فبالنسبة للموجة الأولى والتي تمثلت في الثورة الزراعية استغرق إنجازها آلافا من السنين. أما الموجة الثانية والتي تتمثل في الثورة الزراعية فقد استغرق إنجازها 300 عام. ومن المرجح أن تكتمل الموجة الثالثة خلال عدة عقود، حيث يسير التاريخ بتسارع هائل في عصرنا هذا. وقد بدأت ملامح هذه الموجة الثالثة تظهر منذ نهاية القرن الماضي، القرن العشرين، كما صاحب الثورة العلمية والتكنولوجية التي بلغت ذروتها خلال أواخر القرن العشرين ثورة المعلومات، وأول أبعادها الانفجار المعرفي والمعلوماتي، وكذلك ثورة وسائل الاتصال. وتتضمن هذه الثورة التكنولوجية المعاصرة ازدياد أهمية دور المعرفة، فالسمة الرئيسية لها هي اعتمادها على خلاف الثورة الصناعية الأولى على مواد ومصادر متجددة تعتمد على القدرات الفكرية والمعرفية، وقد أدى ذلك إلى إعادة النظر في مفهوم المعلومات، بحيث أصبح ينظر إليها كمصدر متجدد وكأحد الموارد الاقتصادية شأنها في ذلك شأن عناصر الإنتاج الأخرى. وفي هذا السياق يصبح انتقال المعلومات بمثابة أحد مظاهر انتقال السلع أو عناصر الإنتاج الأخرى، ومن هنا برزت أهمية تكنولوجيا المعلومات والاتصالات وتطورت تطورا هائلا. أدى هذا كله إلى انهيار حاجز المسافات بين الدول وبين القارات، وإلى زيادة احتمالات التأثر بما يحدث في دول وبلدان أخرى، الأمر الذي أثار قضايا كثيرة تتعلق بتأثير هذا التداخل الاقتصادي والثقافي والتأثير الإعلامي لوسائل الإعلام على الذاتية الثقافية أو الهوية الوطنية في مقابل انتشار ثقافة عالمية. وأصبحنا نسمع هذا الحديث عن الكوكبة واحتمالات تأثيرها السلبي على الذاتية، وأصبحنا نتساءل هل نحن مع التراث ومع الذاتية ومع الأصل، أم نحن على العكس مع الانفتاح ومع المعاصرة ومع الكوكبة؟ وهذا طرح خاطئ لقضية لا تحتمل إلا أن نكون مع التراث ومع المعاصرة في ذات الوقت. وهكذا فإن الفصل بين الداخل والخارج يتقلص بسرعة، ولم يعد من الممكن عزل مجتمع عما يحدث خارجه أو منع ما يحدث داخله في التأثير على الخارج. وعلى مستوى آخر نجد أن التطور في العالم والتكنولوجيا خلال 200 سنة قد نتج عنه تراكم معرفي أدى إلى سرعة في التطوير والاكتشافات. وقد أثر التراكم المعرفي أيضا على طائفة كاملة من الأنشطة الاقتصادية في قطاعات الزراعة والصناعة والخدمات، وتم التوصل إلى تكنولوجيات ومنتجات ومهارات أثرت على أنماط العمل وعلى وسائل أدائه. فقد تميز نمط الصناعة في الحقبة مثلا ما بين 1900 ل 1970 بما سمي بالإنتاج الكمي، في حين في الحقبة ما بين 70 إلى 2000 تبدل هذا النمط الصناعي إلى ما سمي بالإنتاج المرن. وفي بداية القرن 21 من المتوقع أن ينتقل هذا النمط إلى الإنتاج المفصل، أي الإنتاج حسب طلب العميل. الأساتذة والعلماء الأفاضل السيدات والسادة، في هذا الإطار تتسع الفجوة بين الذين يعلمون ويعملون والذين يعلمون ولكن لا يعملون، وبين الذين يمتلكون قدرات التعامل التكنولوجي والذين لا يمتلكونها. ويعطي هذا الوضع للمتقدمين الذين يعلمون ويعملون قدرات إضافية. فالميزة النسبية التي كانت تغري الشركات دولية النشاط بالاستثمار فيها وهي رخص الأيدي العاملة سوف تنخفض هذه القيمة تدريجيا تحت تأثير التطور التكنولوجي. ولكن من ناحية أخرى فإن هذه الثورة التكنولوجية تعطي لغير المتقدمين فرصة البدء من حيث انتهى المتقدمون، ولذا ما زالت الفرصة متاحة للدول النامية أن تلحق بالدول المتقدمة دون أن تلزمها بالسير في الطريق من بداية. هي تستطيع أن تستفيد مما تحقق على يد المتقدمين دون أن تلزم من أنها تبدأ من أول الصف. كما خلاصة القول أن هناك واقعا عالميا يتمثل في ثورة ضخمة في تكنولوجيات الاتصال والمعلومات، وفي انهيار النظام الدولي القديم وعدم تشكل نظام جديد حتى الآن ما زالت ملامحه لم تتضح. ملامح نظام جديد له ميزات أو صفات ثابتة مستمرة لم تتضح بعد، ولكنها بصدد التكون مع الاتجاه عامة إلى الاقتصاد الحر، إلى آليات السوق، إلى الاتفاقيات المنشئة لمنظمة التجارة العالمية والتي تسعى لتحرير التجارة العالمية في السلع وفي الخدمات، وإلى حماية حقوق الملكية الفكرية في ظل اتفاقية التريبس وغيرها من الاتفاقيات، وإظهار معايير الجودة العالمية التي يمكن تطبيقها على مستوى العالم إلى جانب معايير أخرى ترتبط بسلامة البيئة. كل هذه الأوضاع أفردت ما يسمى بالعولمة أو الكوكبة، التي يصفها البعض بأنها التداخل الواضح لأمور الاقتصاد مع الاجتماع مع السياسة مع الثقافة مع السلوك، دون اعتداد يذكر بالحدود السياسية بين الدول، فهي تتلاشى. ويرى البعض الآخر تلازم معنى العولمة في مضمار الإنتاج والتبادل المالي، وأن يكون قوام عصر المعولمة هو المجموعة الإنسانية ككل بدلا من الجماعات الوطنية أو القومية. وقد ساحب ذلك أيضا عولمة القضايا والمشكلات الاجتماعية والثقافية مثل قضايا البيئة، عمالة الأطفال، حقوق الإنسان وغيرها. ولم يعد ممكنا لأي قطر من الأقطار، لأي فئة من الفئات، أن تحظر المجتمع الدولي أن يتدخل، أن يناقش، أن يفرض قرارات في قضايا بزعم أنها من الأمور الداخلية للدول التي ليس من حق المجتمع الدولي أن يتدخل فيها. كنا ندرس للطلاب في الماضي في مادة القانون الدولي والعلاقات الدولية أن هناك قضايا تعتبر من صميم السلطان الداخلي للدولة، ولا يجرؤ المجتمع الدولي ممثلا في الدول في مجموعات إقليمية في منظمات دولية أن تتدخل فيها، لأن التدخل فيها هو مساس بالسيادة الداخلية. انتهى هذا الكلام التقليدي ولم يعد له أي جدوى، ولم يعد في الإمكان أن نحرم المجتمع الدولي من أن يتدخل في قضية حقوق إنسان تحدث في قطر ما، في قضية متعلقة بسوء معاملة الأطفال في قطر آخر بزعم أنها قضايا داخلية كما كنا نقوم في الوطن. انفصل الحاجز بين ما هو داخلي وطني محلي وبين ما هو دولي متاح لكل البشرية أن تتدخل فيه. وأصبحنا نسمع عن مفاهيم جديدة، التراث المشترك للإنسانية common heritage of mankind، وأن أي مساس بالإنسانية هنا هو مساس بها هناك، وأن الخير للبشرية كلها، وأن الضرر في قطر ما هو ضرر بالبشرية كلها. وأيا كانت العولمة ضارة أو مفيدة فهي واقع يجب أن نتعامل معه، وبدلا من أن نبكي وأن نحزن وأن ننتقد العولمة يكون التفكير الإيجابي الواقعي كيف أتعامل مع العولمة، لأنها واقع موجود، لا التباكي عليها ولا محاولة إلغائها أو عدم التعامل معها، لأنه حتى لم يعد في إمكاننا عدم التعامل مع العولمة. لذلك يمكنني القول أن العولمة واقع قائم في العالم، نتأثر بما تشبهه من ظواهر على المستوى الاقتصادي والثقافي والإعلامي والسياسي، ومع ظاهرة العولمة نجد أن هناك ظواهر أخرى فرعية تنمو، ظاهرة نمو التجارة العالمية التي تضاعفت نسبتها منذ منتصف الثمانينات من العام الماضي وحتى الآن، نمو أسواق رأس المال العالمية والتأثير المتبادل بينها وبعضها البعض. وتتوقع الدراسات المستقبلية أن عالم القرن الحادي والعشرين سوف يتجه نحو مزيد من التكتل وإنشاء المناطق الاقتصادية، وسيتوقف مصير التكتلات العظمى الثلاث الموجودة في العالم، اليابان، أوروبا، الولايات المتحدة، على قدرتها على إنتاج التكنولوجيات الجديدة التي تضمن حصول مواطنيها على مستوى حياتي معقول في القرن الماضي. الأساتذة الحضور الأجلاء، هناك شبه اتفاق على أن القوى الرئيسية للتغيير بقدوم عام 2010 سوف تتضمن المزيد من التفاعل والتكامل الدولي أو العولمة، المزيد من تطبيق تكنولوجيات المعلومات والاتصالات، المزيد من التطورات في تطبيق التكنولوجيات الحيوية والهندسة الوراثية. وسيتحدث أهم وأبرز التكنولوجيات الحاكمة في القرن الحادي والعشرين في مجموعة من تكنولوجيات المعلومات والاتصالات والطاقة، النقل والمواصلات، الإلكترونيات الدقيقة، الهندسة الوراثية، التكنولوجيات الحيوية، نظم التحكم والسيطرة الإدارية المتناسبة مع الطابع الدولي للاقتصاد، وأخيرا المواد الجديدة. في حين أن البعض الآخر يرى أن العالم سيتسم في هذا القرن بأمواج من الثورات السكانية والتكنولوجية والبيئية، دون دليل أو خطة عمل أو قيادة من نوع ما، يعني يكون نوع من الفوضى العالمية. وأن أكبر امتحان سيواجه المجتمع الإنساني في القرن الحالي سيتمثل في كيفية استخدام قوى التكنولوجيا لإيجاد حلول عالمية شاملة لتحرير 3/4 الجنس البشري الفقير من فخ الانفجار السكاني، نقص التغذية والمجاعة، الأمر الذي نلمسه بعنف في القارة الإفريقية، استنزاف الموارد، الاضطرابات والهجرة القسرية، النزاعات المسلحة اللي ما زالت تظهر من وقت إلى آخر بعد أن عشنا بعد الحرب العالمية الثانية في وهم أن النزاعات المسلحة قد انتهت وأن جميع النزاعات ستحل سلميا. كلها مخاطر تهدد الشعوب الغنية أيضا وليس فقط الفقيرة في شكل قد يكون غير مباشر ولكنه أكيد. وهكذا يتبين أن العولمة بما تأتي به من معارف جديدة وثورات جديدة وتقدم جديد إنما تجري معها أيضا بعض الأضرار وبعض الأخطار، الأمر الذي يقتضي أيضا أن يكون التعامل معها بوعي بالمزايا للاستفادة منها أكثر ونشرها على أكبر حجم ممكن من الناس، ومعرفة الأخطار ومحاولة تجنبها ليس لصالح الفقراء فقط وإنما لصالح البشرية ككل. ومن هنا بدأ يظهر مفهوم أخلاقيات البحث العلمي والتنمية التكنولوجية وفرض نفسه بإلحاح، وأصبح موضوع الإثكس فيما يتم من بحث أو تنمية تكنولوجية يفرض نفسه بإلحاح في المحافل الدولية. السيدات والسادة، انطلاقا من المشروع الحضاري المستقبلي للمجتمع المصري الذي يسعى بشكل واعي لتسخير العلوم والتكنولوجيا لأغراض التنمية المستدامة مع التبصر والإدراك الكامل بأبعاد قضية العولمة والثورة التكنولوجية، وفي ضوء ما سبق طرحه من معطيات واقعية موجودة، وفي ظل رؤية حكيمة من القيادات في مصر لأهمية البحث العلمي والتنمية التكنولوجية، من واقع هذا وارتكازا على الظروف الخاصة بنا فإن جهودا كبيرة غير عادية تبذل في سبيل تفعيل النشاط البحثي وربطه أكثر باحتياجات المجتمع، وحتى لا تكون أبحاث نظرية وإنما أبحاث تؤدي إلى تنمية تكنولوجية حقيقية. ومن هنا جهد يبذل في سبيل تعظيم الاستفادة من التعاون مع المنظمات الدولية، الأمم المتحدة ووكالاتها المتخصصة، التعاون مع الدول الأوربية، التعاون مع الدول النامية التي قطعت شوطا هائلا في مجال التقدم العلمي مثل الهند وباكستان والنمور الآسيوية، التعاون مع المنظمات الإقليمية المختلفة، مواصلة إبرام وتفعيل وتطبيق الاتفاقيات الثنائية التي نبرمها مثل ما أبرمناه مع الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية وكندا واليابان والصين وغيرها من الدول الشقيقة. السيدات والسادة، تأتي هذه الندوة اليوم في إطار التعاون مع دول المجموعة الأوروبية بهدف تحقيق أكبر قدر من الاستفادة من المنح المقدمة من دول الاتحاد الأوروبي والمشاركة في العديد من المرابط البحثية المشتركة بين الطرفين في إطار الاتفاق الأوروبي المتوسطي لتأسيس مشاركة بين جمهورية مصر العربية والجماعة الأوروبية ودولها الأعضاء. وهنا أود أن أشير للمادة 43 من هذا الاتفاق التي تقرر أقرأ تشجيع إقامة صلات وثيقة بين المجتمعات العلمية لدى الطرفين، وخاصة من خلال نفاذ مصر إلى برامج البحث والتطوير الجماعة بما يتمشى مع الأحكام القائمة الخاصة بمشاركة دول ثالثة. 2. مشاركة مصر في شبكات التعاون اللامركزية. 3. تعزيز التوافق بين التدريب والبحث. 4. تقوية طاقات البحث في مصر. 5. تحفيز الابتكار التكنولوجي ونقل التكنولوجيا الحديثة ونشر المعرفة الفنية. في إطار هذا الاتفاق المشاركة مع الاتحاد الأوروبي بتعقد هذه الندوة التي أرجو لها كل النجاح وكل التوفيق. وأختم: Ladies and gentlemen, our seminars aim to maximize the benefit from the grants offered by the European Union and to participate in many of the joint research programs between both parties in the framework of the European Union-Egypt Partnership Agreement. And at the end, I would like to thank all of you for sharing this event, and especially a special thanks to our European friends for coming to transfer their experience and knowledge in the area of proposal writing. I wish you all success in this important seminar, and I wish for our guests an enjoyable stay in Egypt. It is too hot today, but I can expect, I don't know today, I assure you, I can expect that tomorrow and after tomorrow it will be a pleasant time to enjoy your stay in Egypt and not to feel a big difference between the weather in Europe, Brussels, and here in Cairo. Weather today is a very, very exception, and usually it must be 10 degrees less than it is today. وفقكم الله جميعا وسدد خطاكم على طريق البحث العلمي الجاد، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
شكرا لمعالي السيد الاستاذ الدكتور مفيد شهاب وزير التعليم العالي والدولة للبحث العلمي. وننتقل الآن إلى الجلسة الأولى في العمل في برامج الندوة. نقدر ننظمها. شكرا.
Good morning. My name is Marita Gagliamanidu. I'm working in the European Commission in Brussels in the International Scientific Cooperation Program, and I'm dealing in particular with the scientific and technological cooperation with the Mediterranean countries, which means for us the European Union on the one hand, associated countries to the framework program of research, and the Mediterranean partners on the other hand. I'm going to do a presentation of the ongoing call for proposals of the program INCO, which means International Cooperation, and more specifically the component Mediterranean, which is the INCO-Med, which is ongoing until the 5th of April. If you have any question at the end of this presentation, I will be very much pleased to try to respond to you. May I have the first one? Yes. Good. As we can see, all this information is provided, including the application forms, to the website, which is the site of European Community, the Cordis database, to the website Cordis in Luxembourg, which provides all research and technological development information of the European Community on every activity. And if you go inside, it is classified by specific program. You have the program INCO. We say two because this is the second period of INCO, from 1998 to 2002. The program is going to end this year as all the fifth framework program. And there you have all the ongoing call for proposals, the most important being INCO-Med, with the call identifier we have at the top of the overhead. The key objectives of INCO-Med, which are important to be known in order to well understand the spirit of the program and to well submit proposals, are two. The first is to support achievement of scientific excellence, of mutual interest in the Euro-Mediterranean area, which means of interest for Europe, of interest for the European researchers, and of very high level of quality with high level scientific standards. Of course, to reinforce the European community's capacities in the in the sector of the science and technology, and of course, to be used as a key tool in order to achieve the main targets of the Euro-Mediterranean Partnership, or the so-called the Barcelona process. The key principle of this call for proposals is the support of three kinds of activities, the so-called shared cost projects, in reality real research cooperation projects between European Union and Mediterranean partner country participants, the support of thematic networks in the selected sectors, I will explain which ones after, and the support of concerted activities. The minimum amount which will be available to fund the more successful proposals is 15.5 million euro, and the deadline for the submission of all the proposals will be version the 5th of April. I have the next one. We have 3 key sectors which are promoted under these call for proposals. The first one is relative to water, and we have 2 main subcomponents. The first is the integrated water management from the planning and water policy point of view, and the second one is efficiency in water use, which is quite technologically oriented. The second sector is applying to the cultural heritage and mostly on the preserving, the restoration and the use of this cultural heritage, and the third one is relative to health. I would like to underline the fact that for the purposes of the framework program of the European Community on Science and Technology, the countries which are considered to be Mediterranean partners are those which are provided at the top of the overhead. Cyprus and Malta, as well as Israel, are associated to the 5th framework program, which means that the eligibility criteria are applying on a different way for them. We have some eligibility criteria to consider further the proposals which are submitted, and one of them applies to the partnership. As you know, in the European Union, we don't promote national research for member states or for third countries. We promote regional, international research where a number of partners is absolutely necessary. Let's go to the next one, please. If we go down to the specific priorities which are promoted under these call for proposals, and more specifically the first component of the integrated water management of limited water resources in the Mediterranean. For this part, we have promotion of policies and planning scenarios with taking into account the cost efficiency report in order to develop and to use strategies of limited water resources which are the most appropriate for the regions and populations concerned. We have to take into account the existing legislation on water issues, as well as on frameworks which regulate the water use and reuse for agricultural purposes and for human consumption. And we have to look how do they fit all these legislation and the regulatory frameworks with the European Water Framework Directive. And more important, to have a look to the minimum standards which are to be required from the quality point of view of the water to be reused, and not only to agricultural needs but also to the human consumption, with regard to this European Water Framework Directive. The next please. The second specific objective which is promoted is relative to the efficiency in water use, because we have very limited water resources in the Mediterranean. Because we have worked a lot on technologies to be used to increase the water quantities at a very high level of water qualities, first we propose to compare technologies which are available still now, either those which have been produced this last time or the traditional ones, and to set up some criteria in order to decide finally which of them are usable in the near future and which of them should be changed, how should they be changed, and how they can meet the minimum quality standards which are provided under the European Water Framework Directive. This is the first part of this proposal. And of course, the second one is to look after the use and reuse of this water for the sustainable irrigation in the country, in order to reduce the quantities of water with respecting the quality of water which is required for this irrigation. It is not just a comparison principle, because the improvement of technologies which are concerned should also be included in a case by case, of course, in the proposals to be submitted. Next one, please. A second part of this proposal is very much addressed to the efficiency of water use in rain-fed crops. And of course, all these components of biotechnology which is used to modify plants, rain-fed crops, including the deeper study of plant physiology, is included in this subject. In reality, we try to increase resistance and productivity of these plants, which might require less quantities of water. The problem in the Mediterranean is that most of the large quantities of water, more than 80% at average level, is used for agricultural purposes. And the third component is to develop or to improve technologies for water treatment and water reuse, including desalination from the treatment point of view, which have a very worth quality cost report, and which are acceptable for the different socioeconomic activities which might be used. This is for water. The next one. If we look down the part of the call for proposals which is applied to the cultural heritage, we can see three main components. The first one is to identify and, of course, to improve the traditional, the old, the ancient, and manufacturing technologies in order to reconstruct processes or materials which have been used for the production of the so-called cultural heritage, in most of the cases a historical one, as well as for objects of archaeological value. This applies also to the reparation of these sites, monuments, built in most of the cases, and objects. The second one is very much technology-oriented, as well as management approaches which are applicable to the use of the technologies, either to be improved or to be protected, concerning the restoration, the conservation, and the display of built, historical, and subjects of archaeological value. This is a very wide sector of research, and of course the proposals will be bottom-up, which means that the teams of researchers are going to identify something of their interest in such a wide sector of activities to be submitted to this call for proposals. The next one, please. The third one, we are looking to the technologies which have been used in the past, which have been created in the past. Some of them they are not known at all nowadays, or they have been abandoned. We try to recover these technologies, which are very much friendly to the environment, which respect good human conditions of living, which have been of enormous use for humans, and which have been, of course, largely used to set up either building historical monuments or objects of archaeological value. We would like to restore some of them, which are friendly to the environment, which have a good relationship between the value, the quality, and the cost, and which may be very useful for each one of the regions. Finally, concerning the health societies, we have two main components. The first one is very much linked with zoonosis, and we speak about prevention, control and surveillance of diseases of public health importance. The second one is applied to the health policies, and we try to network these health policies with some epidemiological ways of looking at that and to improve them especially for the zoonosis-related diseases in the Mediterranean. Now, these are the key, large, wide, I would say, sectors to apply in the INCOMED project. We are going to look at how to prepare as much as possible a successful proposal at the end of this information day. Before we are going in details to these considerations, let's have a look how you can submit these proposals. We have two main ways. The first one is the electronic way pro tool. You have the address in our Cordis database where you can download all the necessary material free of charge in order to use the Pro Tool application. And this is sent through email to the European Commission. You have all the necessary information with this way. Usually it is something which is largely used for information society programs and not too much for INCOMED because of the complexity of the system. And the other way to submit the proposal is just to use the information package. And this information package, you can download it through the Cordis database at the address I gave you in the first overhead. Usually, the proposal is submitted by the coordinator. In most of the cases, the date of the deadline of the call for proposals, which is in this case the 5th of April. May I have the next one? You can submit it either on a paper copy, and this is available in the Cordis databases, but some copies have also been sent to our EASY delegation in Cairo. We can send to you also on demand as many copies on a paper basis as you wish, or by email. May I have once more? And the address to where you have to be addressed to ask additional copies or any other information which is relative to this call for proposals is given to this overhead. You have an email address where we provide an assistantship for any kind of questions, including a pre-screening of proposals if you have some doubts about the eligibility of the content of a research proposal which is of your interest to be submitted to the call for proposals. And of course, we have also some very useful information which is provided to the Cordis database. Next one, please. As I told you at the beginning, three kinds of instruments are considered in this call for proposals. The first one, which is the shared cost actions, in other words, joint research to be undertaken by different partners. The minimum criteria for eligibility, which applies to that, is two partners from two different Mediterranean partner countries and two partners from two different member states, or one partner from one member state and one partner from one associated to the framework program country. The second activity, as well as the third activity, the concerted actions and the thematic networks, they have a more enlarged partnership, which is the key condition. Three Mediterranean partners from the one side and three member states, or two member states and one associated country, or one member state and two associated countries. Concerted activities means that we put, EU proposes a minimum of 6 research partners who does commit research on a given subject and who would like to launch new activities for the consultation purposes in order to increase their impact on the subject which is under consideration, in order to successfully coordinate their activities and to set up common facilities to accelerate the production and the use of research results. These common activities might be, for example, establishment of common databases or agreement on common methodologies of analysis for data to be commonly used, or extension of some databases which does exist to new partners, and discussions and agreements on protocol of analysis, exchange of scientists between each others, common use on a case-by-case basis of infrastructures for analysis and for research between partners, and so on and so on. Concerning the thematic networks, it is a notion which is much more extended. We can include in these networks partners which doesn't obligatorily commit research by their own facilities, but they can monitor research results. We can include partners from ministries where you set up all the legislation or you follow the monitoring of legislation on very particular issues. Water can be very much interested, an interesting sector on that, as well as health, as well as from some other organizations, including industry, where they have not facilities to commit research, but where they need to use research results, or they need to ask to product new research. And this is quite extensive from the partnership point of view. As a final summary information, these are the 4 web places where you can find out all this information, as well as the necessary information package, which is composed by 3 key parts and which has to be filled in to be submitted to the Council proposals. Of course, the difference between a partner and a coordinator is a big one. If you are a coordinator, you have to get used with how to fill in the proposal and to submit it to the community, how to receive the contribution from the other partners, and how to fill in the summary of all the necessary budget to be invested to the project, including the part which is to be asked to the European Commission. On the other hand, if you are a partner in a consortium, the work is easier, because all information which is applicable to your contribution to the project, the scientific and technological one, as well as the organization of the work and the financial information, and the legal information, of course, has to be communicated to the coordinator, who has to include it in the global scheme of the proposal, and who will be in charge to submit this proposal to the European Community. What we do just after the deadline of the submission of the proposals is to have a look to the eligibility of the proposals which have been submitted, and afterward all the eligible proposals are sent to the evaluation which is undertaken under the responsibility of the European Commission, assisted by independent experts. And of course, experts from all Mediterranean countries are invited in order to proceed together with their homologues from the European Union to the evaluation of the proposals. We have 2 steps of the evaluation. The first one is the so-called scientific, and all the successful proposals to the scientific step are sent to the second step, which is the regional one, where we take into consideration some criteria which prevail for our cooperation at the regional level, in this case in the Mediterranean area. At the end of these 2 steps of the evaluation, the Commission is preparing the final list for proposals which have been proposed to be funded, and we undertake the so-called contract negotiations. This is the time scale of the follow-up of the call for proposals until the conclusion of the contract. Thank you very much for your interest, and I'm pleased to respond to any questions you have to raise in that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maria Diamani, for this informative lecture. لو سمحتوا يا جماعة I would like to, on this occasion, let me please express my gratefulness and gratitude of the National Research Center for Mr. Michel Andrier, the first counselor of the European Commission delegation in Egypt. He actually organized all of this event with us. And thank you very much. I would like to inform the participants that all the websites and electronic electronic addresses projected by Dr. Maria are already with us, and it is present at the International Relations Office of the National Research Center, and all the information package of the European Commission projects. We have many copies and ready to be distributed to our colleagues in the universities and in other ministries, not only to our colleagues of the National Research Center. So any information available. I would suggest, if you agree, to have now a coffee break for 30 minutes. So we will start here again at 12:15 exactly, and give some information in Arabic. أرجو إن أنتوا في القهوة يعني ما تاكلوش كتير من الحلويات والحوادث، لأن في غدا من حتة كويسة، فمش هتعرفوا تغدوا لو كانتوا مع الحاجات اللي مع القهوة مش برضه لو سمحتوا دي نصيحة. الحاجة الثانية أتقدم باسم أسرة المركز وحضراتكم الشكر لوزارة الخارجية اللي هي مقدمة لنا الويلكم ده هي اللي عزمنا على الويلكم ده، وسعادة السفيرة نبيلة سلامة هي اللي مطلعة. فأرجو دلوقتي 12 وربع في حاجة واحدة صغيرة. مبنى رئاسة الشعب هو اللي هيستضيف كل الزملاء الضيوف والاساتذه والافاضل من خارج المركز القومي للبحوث والعلاقات العامه، هترشد سعادتهم الى مبنى رئاسه الشعب اللي هو المطعم بتاعنا ده مجهز لاستقبال الضيوف. باقي الزملاء من المركز معاه في التذكره بتاعته هيقول له هو في انهي قاعه او في استكمال للاعداد اللي هي فارجوكم معلش هم دايما بيقفلوا على طول، هو ده في الزملاء. نمرة 2 السادة الضيوف من خارج المركز، السادة من أساتذة الجامعة والوزارات المختلفة والمتخصصين وعلماء مصر اللي طلبوا أي برنت ماتيريال من الخاصة بالسوق الأوروبية هي موجودة عندنا، بس أنا يعني بستسمحهم إن الحصول على الماتيريال دي يبقى ابتداء من بكرة، لأن زملائي الدكاترة اللي بيساعدونا في مكتب العلاقات الدولية موجودين هنا معانا وواقفين على رجلينا على ضوافرنا عشان ننظم فما هماش افيلابل انهم يمدونا بحاجة. نعم؟ يعني for a limited number of participants 5-6 كوبيز هجيبها دلوقتي لحضراتكم. الباقيين بقى زملائنا من جامعة القاهرة وعين شمس واللي موجودين معانا في مصر يبقى ابتداء من بكره ان شاء الله بالتليفون احنا نبعتها له بالبريد يعني. I would like to thank Mr. Louis Bellimont, the head of the Directorate of Research of the European Commission. Please.
Thank you. So, Mr. Hermanito, having presented to you what we are doing now with Mediterranean countries, our intention is now to consider the future. To consider the future and what are the intentions, what is the approach, what is the policy of the European community for scientific and technological cooperation with Mediterranean partner countries and in particular with Egypt. So first of all, before entering into, I would say, really detail, I would like to have you better acquainted with this policy, because we think that it could be useful and could help you in understanding what is this approach for the future. So, first of all, as you may know, we have been successful in the European Union to create an economic community, to create a trade community, to launch a certain number of common policies, the most famous one being the agricultural policy. And now the Commission is intending to develop what is called ERA, so the European Research Area. So we would like, and we will do it, sure, we would like to create, to develop an area for research and for technological development in which there will be free movement, if I may say so, of persons, of ideas, of results, and of investments. So this is really now our aim, to develop this European research area. And of course, we need an instrument to do it, and this instrument will be the next framework program, the sixth one. As you may know, we are operating with multi-annual programs for research and technological development. We are implementing the fifth one for the period from 1999 to 2002, and now we are preparing to launch the next one, the sixth one, for the period 2002, 2006, and in fact 2003, 2006. So, this European research area, which is our basic objective, of course, will be an open, according to our understanding, according to our intention, it will be an open research area. We don't want to create a kind of fortress Europe in the field of research and technological development. We want a zone, we want an area open to the world, attractive for the rest of the world, and cooperating with the rest of the world. So, the European research area is, of course, our objective and will be a frame to develop RTD or SMT activities of interest for the European community, for the European Union, but of course, we want also to use this instrument, to use this frame to develop our cooperation with the rest of the world, with two key words. And this is, I think, very important. If we consider now our scientific and technological cooperation policy for the future, there are two main key words. One is dialogue, the second one is partnership. Why? First of all, why dialogue? For an excellent reason. We don't want, we even don't intend, or we don't imagine to impose scientific and technological cooperation to a third country or to a group of third countries. Our basic objective is to find sector, domain, problems, issues of common interest. So, first of all, we want to define cooperative activities in the field of science, in the domain of science and technology, which are, of course, interesting for the European Union, because we are using community taxpayer money, so which are of interest for the community, for the European Union, but which are also of interest for our partners outside the European Union. So there is only one way to define these sector, domain, problems, and so on of common interest, is to dialogue, to discuss with these third country partners. So first basic intention and approach is to develop this, what I call, political dialogue with countries. And with Mediterranean partner countries, we are the forum, we are the place to develop such a dialogue, and that is MOCO, the European Mediterranean Monitoring Committee, MOCO, which has been created by our heads of state and government in 1995 in Barcelona. And in MOCO, in this particular committee, you find our 15 member states and also our 12 Mediterranean partner countries. And for Egypt, if my memory is correct, we have the chance to have an Egyptian representative, Dr. Selfel Nassar. Excuse me if my pronunciation is not absolutely correct. Who is representing Egypt in this committee. And it is in this committee that we, community, when I say community, I mean Commission plus European member states. We present our ideas, what we think would be useful, interesting to do jointly with Mediterranean countries. And we have reactions, comments, suggestions from our Mediterranean partner countries. And at the end, we define a joint, what I would call a joint action plan. And in the field of MOCO, on Mediterranean countries, for instance, you have there what we think, Commission and member states. So we think in the future we would have to focus on a certain number of issues in the field of environment, health, water, agriculture, technology, cultural heritage, and so on. These are our ideas. Now, please. Now, we are in the process of this dialogue with the Mediterranean partner countries. And there have been a certain number of specialized workshops in each one of these domains, sectors. There will be some other in the coming weeks, and before summer, we hope that we will have defined with our partners, we will have defined this action plan for the future. Then we will have an action plan. How to implement it? So the instrument, once more, will be the 6th framework program and the instruments dedicated to international cooperation in the 6th framework program. And in this 6th framework program, we have essentially 3 ways of developing cooperation with countries' partners. First of all, we offer the possibility of participation in our, what I call, community activities. There you find the list of the 7, normally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yes, the 7 priorities which have been retained by the community, by the European community, and for each one of these priorities, RTD programs, SMT activities will be launched. These activities, these programs are defined, are shaped to respond to our needs in the community. It's why I call them pure community programs. We discussed with nobody outside. These are programs aimed at responding to our needs in the Union. But certain of these activities could also be of interest for a country outside Europe. There might be common problems, there might be activities of mutual interest when we consider these, what I call, pure community RTDs activities. So first of all, we offer, for instance, to Egyptian scientists the possibility of participating in these community activities. And this is a novelty. In the 6th framework program, we will even have the possibility of financing the participation of an Egyptian scientist in these, what I call, pure community activities. So not only we open our program as we were doing in the past, but we are now also proposing to grant, to finance the participation of these third country partners. And I think this might be of interest. I don't know. I am not an expert in Egyptian science, but I think regularly that in genomics, in information society, in food, in sustainable development, there are certainly activities which are going to be launched to respond to community needs, but which could be also of interest for you. So this is the first, I would say, instrument for international cooperation. The second one is what we call specific RTD activities. These are specific because these are not defined by very wise, very clever civil servants in Brussels, knowing the community needs and how to respond to these needs. But these specific activities will be aimed at solving or at tackling problems, issues, and so on, of common interest, defined, shaped, and finally decided jointly between the community and the third country or the group of third countries. For implement the MOCO, this monitoring committee to which I refer, will be used to implement some of the MOCO recommendations. Because some problems that we would like to consider in the future, we cannot solve them using the first 7 priority activities, what I call the pure community activity. So we must define particular actions and we call them specific activities. So this will be the second way of developing cooperations with the Mediterranean basin and in particular with Egypt. Now, in the future, we will, as I said, we will implement, and I hope, more than we have been able in the past, to implement the MOCO recommendations using either the participation in the community activity or the specific activity. And then you have the first recommendations coming from the MOCO, so which are more or less the first conclusions of the MOCO work these last months. And you see that there are in fact 4, I would say, priority areas for developing cooperation between the community and the Mediterranean countries: integrating water management, renewable energy, health, risk assessment, and management. These are once more very broad sector, very broad domains. They are to be more precisely defined, more precisely considered in the coming weeks and months in order to really prepare a very precise action plan for the coming years. Please. So, we will implement MOCO recommendations using, as I said, either the participation or the specific, launching specific activities. But we have now, in the 6th framework program, another instrument to develop our links with third countries, and another instrument which I think will be very useful to develop scientific and technological cooperation. And this new instrument, because it's a very new one, we call it the International Mobility Scheme. And what is this scheme? Very simple. We will have the possibility of granting a research or a research and training stay in Europe, the European Union, not only the European Union, I will come back later. So in Europe, or let's say a young Egyptian scientist. So we'll be able to pay up to 2 years for such a stay in Europe. At the end of this 2-year stay in Europe, we will, I would even say, we will impose to this Egyptian scientist to come back to Egypt. And we will pay to him or to her 1 year more. So our system will be up to 2 years in Europe, up to 1 year in the country of origin, with the same salary, if I may say so. So we think that in doing so, not only we will not develop a brain drain towards Europe, because it is not our intention, but furthermore, we will potential in the country with which we want to develop long-lasting RTD cooperation. Because you know, as I do, and maybe you know better than I do, that when somebody is back home, he or she maintains links with the laboratory in which he or she stayed during a certain period of time. So this is, I have said, a very new scheme, enabling going to Europe and coming back to the country of origin. But it is also a two-way mobility scheme. So we will also have the possibility of granting, of giving a financial support to a European researcher who would like to go in Egypt, for instance, for a certain period of time to carry out a research work or a research and training work in Egypt. So we'll have also the possibility of granting, as I said, European researchers going to Egypt as we are in Egypt. These are the three instruments to be used in the coming years to develop and to enhance, I hope, our scientific and technological cooperation with Egypt. Now, the next one, please. So, this being said, where are we? And then I will come back to 2 points, budget and what means now European Union, when I use the word European Union. This is more or less the timing for the launch of the 6th framework program. Hopefully, we will get a decision from the Council and from the European Council of Ministers and the European Parliament in June 2002 for the framework program. Then we need what are called specific program decisions, because the framework program, the decision is still very general, not very precise. So we must precise them for, I don't know, for genomics, for nanotechnology, for space, and so on and so forth. We must precise more what we intend to do in the future with the budget allocated and given by the Council. So this is precise in the various specific programs which have been submitted to the Council. Because in order to save time, in fact, we try to work in parallel. We don't wait for the final decision on the framework program before submitting the specific program, and it is the same for the rules for participation and dissemination. Our objective and our hope is that all these legal decisions be taken by the Council and the Parliament for, let's say, beginning September or end of September, in order to launch the first calls for proposals somewhere in November, beginning of November 2002, in order to receive the first application beginning of 2003, and to sign the first contracts before the end of 2003. And this is very important, I think, for you, because you know better than I that it takes time to set up consortia, to prepare applications, to prepare proposals to be submitted when we launch the calls for proposals. Because among the various calls for proposals we launch in the autumn 2002, there will be the calls for the specific activity, in particular particular for Mediterranean countries. And there will be also the call for the various, what I call pure community activities in which you should be interested in participating. So, you must prepare in advance, you must prepare yourself in advance to be able, when we launch the calls, to respond, because at that moment, in general, we put a 3 months period of time before putting the deadline. So 3 months, you know, you cannot prepare a proposal in a 3 months delay. So I think this is important to have in mind. So I said that we are completing our dialogue with Mediterranean countries in order to define our precise work plan, our precise action plan for the coming years. And these are the activities to be undertaken in the coming weeks, as I said. But this transparency is, first of all, important when you consider the last slide, because you will see our objective, and we will achieve our aim, I can tell you. Our objective is to have the completion, to conclude this policy or political dialogue by June 2002. So June 2002, our policy for recent cooperation with Mediterranean countries will be fixed, and then we will implement it. So it is now, if you want to inject, to have an input in these reflections, in these work, it is really the moment to express your needs, your wills, and your, I would say, your thoughts in this work, either by participating in this workshop, but first of all, by giving to your representative in Malta, that said enough, to give in the necessary information. Because when he is sitting, when he is in the room with the other Malta members, for us, he speaks on behalf of the Egyptian scientific community. And he is expressing the views of the Egyptian scientific or political scientific community. No, we cannot argue. It would be a pleasure, but we cannot discuss with everybody, each one of you. So we need an interface, and you have an interface. Don't hesitate to use it. Now a procedure. I told you, and I refer sometimes to the European Union. In fact, the European Union, the wording is not correct, because now I would have better to refer to the European Research Area, because this European Research Area has borders which are not the same with the ones of the European Union, because it includes, first of all, of course, the 15 member states of the European Community, but it includes also the 10 Eastern and Central European candidate countries. Please don't ask the list, I will have some problem. But there are 10 I can make. And it includes also the 3 Mediterranean candidate countries. 3, Cyprus, Malta, and also Turkey. So it includes the 15 with the 30 plus some other European countries, such as EEA countries, namely Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, and finally, last but not least, Switzerland. So when I was, for instance, saying that we are able to grant an Egyptian scientist who would like to go in the European Union, in fact, it's not only with 15 member states. We are able to grant an Egyptian scientist who would like to go in Poland, right? Or in Latvia, or in Romania, or in Turkey, or in Cyprus. For us, when we are considering now the geographical scope or the geographical dimension of our field of intervention, it is broader than the 15 member states. Then the budget. It's excellent to have instruments, it's excellent to have a policy, but better have some money to implement such a policy. So as you may know, for the framework program as a whole, a budget of 17.5 billion euros will be available. I hope that you know that we have a new money in Europe, the euro. So 17.5 billion euros for the framework program. For what is more particularly international cooperation, there will be 300 million. There will be 300 million euro, 300 million euro available to support, to grant the participation of foreigners, let's say, the participation of these foreigners in our, what I call, pure community activities, the 7th priority. So for all these activities, which are, for which there are 30-something million, no, 1.3 something, not billion euros, let's use, because these are specific activities. So for the participation in about, let's say, 12 billion euro research, community research effort, we have 300 million euros to pay the participation of foreign scientists. Then, for the specific activities themselves, we are once more 300 million euros, the same amount. There is no direct correlation, but the same amount for specific activities. This is the situation for the moment. So this could be different when the final decision is taken by the Council and by the Parliament. And a priori, I can tell you, maybe because I am optimistic, I am sure we will get 600 million euros, and I am quite confident that we will get more, but at least 600. And this is not the end of the story, because we need also some money for the international mobility scheme, of course. And for this international mobility scheme, there is no fixed, for the moment, fixed budget. All what we know is the following. For the overall mobility scheme, for the overall community mobility scheme, 1.6 something billion euro will be available, out of which a certain amount for the international component of the community mobility scheme. there is no figure. There is one thing which is sure, we said, it cannot be zero. So it will be, I don't know, maybe €1 or 100 million euro, I don't know, but there will be something. So what is certain is that before the end of this year, more than 600 million euros will be available for international SMT cooperation. So I think when I consider what we have been able to do in the past with less, I am sure that we have the means to reinforce and to develop our scientific cooperations with the rest of the world, and in particular with the Mediterranean region, because it is not a secret. And for us, it's a priority. It's a priority. When the Council and the Commission adopted their priorities for the years to come, I tell you, there are, in the field of science in particular, there are two important or two main priorities: enlargement, so the integration of the candidate countries in the Union, or the main priority, just behind Mediterranean. So the cooperation with our Mediterranean partner countries, issue allowed with our Mediterranean friends. This is really priority. So now to conclude, I will maybe too long, and I apologize. These are some, I hope, interesting and useful sites where you could find all information related to international SMT cooperation. There are, so these are the general ones. Now we have a specific one for INCO, international cooperation. And finally, because there is another one, no other one. So there is no finally on the slide. So, indeed, there you can find, as I said, everything. Everything. And you can even find information, I would say, in advance, because you find what we are proposing when it comes to the Council, even before the decision is taken. And I can tell you, based on my experience, there are changes between our proposals and the final decision. But you know, in general, these are really minor changes. They have in particular somewhere the change a word. The substance in general is not changed. So when you know what is the Commission proposal to the Council, you have, I would say, an excellent idea or what is going to happen. So you can prepare yourself, you can start discussing with other researchers in the community in order to elaborate, to define joint projects, to define applications to be submitted when you launch a course. As I said, I've been too long, so once more I apologize and I thank you for your attention.
I would like to express our deep thanks to Mr. Louis Bellemont for the excellent and knowledgeable explanatory lecture. And it is clear for me that Dr. Maria Diamant Dieu and Dr. Filimo are very insisting in helping us and stimulating our scientific community towards participation and application to the European research areas. And as I understood from the last lecture concerning the 6th framework program, there is more possibilities and more chances and wider scope compared to the 5th program. I would suggest that we move to the 3rd lecture, if you agree, and then we can open the discussion and receive questions from the public. So I invite both of our distinguished guests to lecture us for how to best prepare a successful project proposal. Thank you very much.
It is just a material for the basis of the discussion concerning the preparation of proposals which have to be submitted to our programs of science and technology cooperation on a general way. I'm sure that you know better than me how we prepare the different phases of this proposal. We have in mind that these proposals submitted to any one of our specific programs are going to be evaluated on a peer review basis by scientists who are very much experienced on the subject. The first thing which is very much important to have to prepare a very successful proposal is to have a thorough look to the call for proposals. Eligibility on the partnership point of view. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask to every person who is dealing with the specific program. Eligibility on the scientific and technological basis point of view. What we think in some cases that it is eligible, it could not be eligible, and vice versa. A good control before you submit a proposal is absolutely necessary, and for this reason, for every specific program, for every specific call for proposals, we have special addresses in the web and in the email of people who does respond to all kinds of questions, and of course we publish as large as possible all the necessary information concerning the call for proposal. One suggestion, don't be afraid when you are receiving big packages of information. First thing, when we organize a call for proposals, we address a wide and very extensive set of instruments which can be used. In most of the cases, you are interested in something very particular and not on the wide scope of the call for proposals. The second thing is that we try on an equity spirit to provide as much information as possible. Partners are need to set down a good proposal. If you don't know what the evaluation criteria which are going to be used to evaluate your proposal, you don't know how to write down on a good way a good idea. All this information has to be read in relation with the particular subject and the particular instrument you need to develop under the call for proposals. Don't be afraid with the big packages of information packages. On a general way, what is very much important is that nobody who has no partnership before the organization of the call for proposals has been successful to our call for proposals. You need a long-lasting relationship with other scientists in other countries, and you need to have still some coordination with other laboratories before the publication of the call for proposals in order to be in position in the very short timing of the publication, usually 3 months, to develop a particular proposal on a paper basis. We have accounted that for 5 participant projects, people need more than 300 hours work in order to develop a research proposal from all points of view, from the scientific, from the planification of the work to be done, as well as from the financial point of view. This is a huge amount of time which has to be consecrated to the preparation of the proposal. In order to be successful, the general and the specific objectives should be very clear at the proposal level and therefore at the participants level. In other words, what do the partners wish to achieve, and what each one of them wish to achieve, and what the others need to achieve. Because a partnership should be very coherent preparation of a proposal and should be very complementary to each other's. A proposal where everybody is working in its own position without any close coordination of the activities is usually rejected during the scientific evaluation. The second thing which has to be agreed between the participants in the proposal is what's the methodology which has to be used under the research program. Which partner is going to work for which component of the research, and what's the deliverable for each partner, and how these deliverables can be combined between each other in order to provide the general deliverables of the proposal. You need, in most of the cases, to working on common protocols for analysis or common methodologies for modeling, and all these things have to be agreed and coordinated before the proposal is going to be written. May I have the next one, please? The next question, which is absolutely necessary to set up a successful proposal, is to respond on how to make methods correspond to the objectives, the general objectives and the specific ones. And this is a very important stage, how to set up a coherent work plan. This work plan, which provides all the necessary information for the global research to be undertaken, includes all the partners' participation. In all cases, for the call for proposals, we have a part of our information package where this information should be provided on a very analytical basis, and this should be anonymous. Why it should be anonymous? Because we don't wish our external scientific evaluators are influenced by the names and the reputation of some laboratories, or because they don't know a new one, they don't provide a good mark as they should perhaps do it. In this case, please pay attention to the fact that even at the publication of work references, the partner should be very careful in order not to mention their own names. You can always be referred to a publication where your name is mentioned, but please don't say before the bracket that this is our publication. Otherwise, the proposal is not eligible. This is from the eligibility point of view. But anyhow, the work plan is the key component of a successful project according to our evaluation, and has to be carefully agreed between the participants to the project. In this work plan, of course, the discussion should be on which kind of resources, from the human point of view, from the financial as well as from the material equipment, are going to be used by each one of the partners in order to realize, for a given period which has to be precise, the program of work to be proposed. One other question is which kind of these resources can be immediately mobilized by each one of the partners, and this way you know which nature and which number of these resources is necessary to be provided financially by the community. In this context, it is necessary to provide a clear explanation on the cost of each one of the partners who is participating to the project. And of course, this will provide also the total cost, and to take into account the coordination costs, which are very much important. And of course, afterward, it should be also provide a very clear explanation about deliverables, which should be identified, as well as milestones. And this is the famous matrix tables, where for each one of the partners who is participating to the program, and for each one of the phases of the work plan, is provided an explanation which kind of milestone will be provided in order to allow to the other partners to undertake the work or to finalize the work package, and which kind of deliverables, which should be quantified, will be provided by each partner or by the consortium for each one of the periods of the implementation of the project. These are the very basic general principles on how to set up this successful proposal. For the time being, and I say for the time being because of course some modifications, key modifications, will come in concerning the sixth framework program call for proposals, and especially the instruments which are going to be used under the sixth framework program. But for the time being, our information packages are composed of three parts. The first one is the administrative information, which is provided for each one of the proposers, as well as for the coordinator. And there we have also the proposal summary. The second part is the scientific description of the work to be undertaken. And there we have all the objectives, the specific and the general ones, how the project is contributing to the program objectives, in this case the INCO program. What's the innovation, because we don't provide any assistance to projects, research projects which are not innovative, which have not an added value to the knowledge which is well known up to now. What's the work plan for the overall project, for the timing which is asked for, and for each one of the proposers, and the work packages, including the adequacy between the deliverables and the milestones. Please note that this is a key part for the evaluation of the proposal, and this should be anonymous. And the part C, which provides place for the names and the titles of the teams, applies to the impact of the research to be undertaken, as well as the way the management of the proposed research is going to be implemented. All three parts should be submitted at the same time during the call for proposals. Finally, just to provide you general information, on what's the criteria to evaluate the research project proposals which are submitted to INCO program. In reality, we have 4 main criteria which are applicable in the 2 phases of the evaluation. The first one is the scientific and technological excellence, and we have a weight of 30% of the total marks to be allocated to each one of the proposals. We have a threshold over 5 points which are the maximum which can be allocated. The threshold for the scientific and technological excellence of the proposal is 4. It is very high. We are receiving many proposals and we try to keep just the best. The second criteria, which is very important, is the community added value, and by community in this very specific context we mean the Euro-Mediterranean cooperation in science and technology according to the objectives of the research policy of European research area on the one hand and the Barcelona process on the other hand. The weight of these criteria is 10% and we have not a threshold. The third criteria is the management of the proposal as well as the resources from the human, the material and the financial point of view. And there we have 15% of the weight and we have no threshold as far as the first step is concerned, and the first step means the scientific so-called evaluation. If the proposal is successful enough to this step, it is sent to the second step. In the second step, the evaluators are coming exclusively from the Mediterranean partner countries.